Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And this evening, I've got 4 chilling real reports and true stories of unexplained encounters and strange experiences from viewers just like you. These contain cryptid sightings of dogmen, possible alien abduction, and more. They are following reports, and they're very compelling and maybe even a bit unsettling. And at the end, I have a bonus segment where I share a little something interesting that my research has dug up. You don't want to miss this one. So grab your gear and let's ride. In this first report, a soldier shares a jaw-dropping encounter story where he claims to have witnessed another man transform into a tree. Yes, you heard that right, a tree. But is it a mere figment of his imagination and fatigue, or is there maybe something more sinister at play? I personally believe his report that he indeed experienced something otherworldly.
Dear Tattooed Biker, I have a really weird experience that I wanted to share. You see, one time back when I was in the Army, I was out in Fort Hood, Texas, doing maneuvers, and I was the lucky one with radio watch that particular night. So I'm just sitting there, doing my little hour-long shift, and we've got the ranchers there. They've got the cattle ranging on the land, and they would eat the grass. Well, one of them came up into our area of operation, and he had his little whip and all. And so I was just kind of talking to him because I was bored, There wasn't much else going on, and he didn't speak any English. And my Spanish was really bad at that time, so I was thinking, great, I can practice. And that'll help me stay awake at the same time. So, we were sitting there, talking for a while, and it got to the end of my shift. And it was time for me to wake the next guy up. Now keep in mind, the farmers, they're not supposed to be there. So I'm like, hey man, you gotta go. But he wouldn't leave. Finally, getting irritated, I got a little more insistent. So I was like, no man, I gotta get the next guy up. So then I reached over to grab hold of him, and I swear, he turned into a tree right under my grip. He really did. He just turned into a tree. I mean, it was like, South Texas is with the trees and the way they look. And he just turned into one of those trees. I mean, I'm not crazy. I know that tree wasn't there when we set up. He was just suddenly gone, and the tree was there. He turned into a tree. I know it. I was like, oh my God. And I got the next guy up because it was his time, and even as he was walking out, he says, now why did we put our camp right here with this tree in the middle? I mean, I'll tell you what. To him, it was just like a little shrub, like it had grown up overnight or something. And it stood exactly 5'10" or so, just like the farmer had. Just weird. Thanks for reading. Signed, Trevor.
Now, in the second story, I share an email from a concerned mother who fears that her young daughter's imaginary friend might be linked to a far more menacing possibility. Could these seemingly innocent childhood memories actually be hiding some dark and sinister secrets? I can't wait to hear what you think about this one.
Dear Biker, thank you for reading my story. My journey with alien beings began in 1989. My daughter was 2 years old then, and let me tell you a little bit about her. She was a very mentally advanced baby. Communication was no problem with her. She could talk and complete sentences using words beyond a 2-year-old's vocabulary and know all the meanings. I believe that she could have been what they now call an indigo child. Around this time, she developed an imaginary playmate named Caney. Like most children's imaginary friends, there would be spots set at the table for her, asking her what she'd like from menus, saying goodnight to her, things like that. Just as if another child was around. She was so serious about Caney, though. Sometimes I wonder about all this. Why this sudden friend? It's not like she's an only child and she has lots of family around. The odd thing was that my daughter told me that Caney scared her. I would ask her why, and she would say, "'Cause she looks like a monster, like she's wearing a mask." At night, it would scare her when Caney would come out of the closet. One morning, she had told me a very vivid dream she had, in which Caney had come to her and taken her and her brother up to what she called the station. She said that my son doesn't like Caney or going with them. She said it kind of burns your feet when you go up, but she likes to go because you can see all the kids there. She also said it's fun when they let you float, and that the station is purple inside. I think that she's had a very lucid dream and an interesting imagination. One day, while doing dishes, and my daughter behind me playing, there was a loud knocking on the door upstairs. No one was at home that day, other than just the two of us. It was knocking in groups of threes. I asked her if she heard that, and she just says nonchalantly, "Yeah, it's Caney." I was extremely freaked out by this, so I immediately ran up there, and no one was there. Around this time, my daughter told me that Caney didn't scare her now. Asking her why, she replied that she had taken off her mask and looks normal now. All this continued for about 8 or 9 months, and then the day came when we went to visit my mom. I was talking to her in the kitchen when I heard my daughter yelling, "Mom, there's Caney." I ran into the living room, and there, on my mother's coffee table, sits the book called Communion, and my daughter happily points at the cover saying, "Look, it's Caney." I thought, what in the world? My expression must have said it all. My mom just looks at me and nonchalantly says, "Take it home and read it." I kept saying, "But what is it?" Her reply was to just read it, so I did just that, and it shook my foundations, to say the least. While reading it, I noticed similar experiences with my children, my family, my life. I was terrified. I've always been an open-minded person and even believed in life elsewhere, but I was unaware of alien abductions. At the same time, I was becoming so aware of my life and all the strange experiences I've ever had and where it was leading. But the biggest awareness was about the children and how they experience abductions. Young children haven't been conditioned to believe what society thinks that we should believe. So when you think a child is just full of imagination and stories of make-believe, one day you might just wake up to a true reality check. Signed, Allie.
And finally, I have a father's spine-tingling report of his sons who both encountered large and terrifying bipedal canines, often referred to as the dogman or werewolf-type creatures, on separate occasions, years apart, but in the same general area. What are they seeing out there in the Florida night?
Hey TB, in the summer of 2018, my oldest son and his wife were traveling from Daytona Beach on Highway 100 toward Ocala. They were driving a work van with a trailer, doing 60 miles per hour around 12 midnight. There were no lights on the road, but their headlights illuminated a creature standing on the side of the road looking across the other side. As they were approaching, it never looked into the headlights but just kept staring across the highway. The description was a bipedal, wolf-like creature that appeared to be predominantly bare-skinned, though there were hair on some parts of the body. They described the face as pure evil, with large, visible teeth. It was very tall, they said, agreeing that it probably stood between 7 or 8 feet tall. My son stated that it was very much taller than the van he was driving. They continued on their way praying that they wouldn't break down. Well, like I said, that was back in 2018, and we didn't tell his younger brother or anyone else as far as I know. Then, just recently, my youngest son tells me that he was driving home along the same route he drove every night. This was in Polk County, Florida, and it was around 1:30 a.m. On 2 consecutive nights while driving along that same stretch of road, a wolf-like creature had run in front of his car on all fours. It was absolutely huge, he told me. Its back was at least 4 feet from the ground, and it had a large, well-developed and muscular chest, which tapered dramatically towards the abdomen and flanks. It also had a large, bushy tail. And after he shared this with me, I decided to reach out to your channel and listeners to see if there had been other similar reports anywhere else in Florida. Signed, Charles.
Now, prepare yourself for this next email from a man who tells the terrifying true story about sighting a winged humanoid soaring through the night sky. He goes on to share that his nephew had a similar, even more unsettling experience. What is this unidentified cryptid?
Hi, Tattooed. I had an encounter with a bird-like creature, but I know it wasn't a bird. It looked to be a flying person. I know this sounds weird and crazy, but I know what I saw. Well, here's the whole story. On February 5th, 2018, around 11:30 p.m., my older sister and her husband were taking me, my little sister, my mom, and my 2 nieces to eat at Denny's in a nearby town, Fort Myers, Florida. As we were driving on I-75, out of nowhere, through the windshield, I see a person with wings flying over our car. It went over 2 times back and forth. I was able to get a really good look at the thing. It looked like a person with wings, but then again, it also looked like a pterodactyl. My brother-in-law also saw it, and he agreed with me. He swears it wasn't a bird, and his description matched mine to a T. Well, that was my encounter with the creature. My nephew also witnessed a person-like winged creature. He was walking his girlfriend back to her house late at night, and there, by her neighbor's house, are some trees. He said he saw a person, or at least the figure of a person, standing in the tree staring at him. He asked his girlfriend if she also saw it, and she said that it was always there. He then started to walk closer to get a better look when the creature jumped from the trees and onto his girlfriend's neighbor's fence, causing it to make a loud rattling noise. The dog started barking like crazy, and then the figure unfurled these huge, leathery-looking wings and flew off right in front of his eyes. They then ran into his girlfriend's house, scared that it would come back, but it didn't. My nephew's encounter happened in Lee Acres, Florida, a couple of days before my encounter happened. We have no clue as to what this thing is or why it might be following us. Signed, Chris.
Now, while digging deep into the history of this area, I found another cryptid in Florida. This was apparently a monster that was eventually reported in the local news. Apparently, a local correspondent contributes to the Fort Myers Press a story about a huge snake lately seen crossing the Calahoochee River, and the press calls upon the Herald to match the story. As they don't have any big snakes in that locality, the Herald gives it up and begs it to repeat what it said to Colonel Tom Appleyard, that it's not on the authority of snakes, and since no one in their office drinks liquor, none of them has had the pleasure of actually seeing any. But here is the narrative of the Lee County serpent, as it became to be known as it appeared in the press.
Colonel Demir Irvin Lowe came down last Sunday, presumably October 4th, and reported having seen an immense snake swim the river about 2 miles from here. They say it appeared to be a great log on the water when they first saw it, but they learned it was a snake when they got to where it was, as the tail was just leaving the water on the south side of the river, and its head stood up 4 or 5 feet from the water, some 20 yards from the edge of the river, and it looked as large as a nail keg. Of course, the reptile must have been 50 to 60 feet long, and its body looked to be about the size of a flour barrel. Now, this looks fishy, but no one in this section would doubt the veracity of either of these 2 gentlemen. We have since learned that the Indians have told of such a snake 20 years ago, having been seen by them in a certain swamp, and they always kept away from that swamp. This will give a good color to the snake story. The serpent was heading up the southeast and will possibly take up the first thick swamp that suited his convenience. From the Punta Gorda, Florida Herald, October 15th, 1908.
And there it is, all I have for you this evening. As always, I look forward to reading your thoughts and theories in the comment section below, but please keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a strange experience or an unexplained encounter that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description, and well, your story may just wind up in a future episode. Anyways, thanks so much for taking this strange ride with me. I really appreciate you. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.